Hello, this is Antonio Gangale. Today I will be discussing the Buggish report. It is a mysterious search folder that I had discovered on my computer years ago, and it is continuously tracking things. Wanted to go over some things with it and show the people what's contained within it. So let me give you some back history. So I discovered this Buggish report on May 16, 2001. It was labeled the Buggish report. It was on an exclusive offline computer which had confidential proprietary materials, private non-disclosure information, some legal matters, as well as privileged works that I was working on. It was a serious intrusion upon the sanctity of my person, especially the sensitive information and things contained within it. A little back history. A month earlier, I had been permanently deprived the right to file documents with the Northern District Court. So there was tremendous legal issues going on. You can examine on YouTube the issues, I think, within blocking access to the court. There's a couple case law that I'd like to cite, stating that every moment continuous restraint amounts to a flagrant, indefensible, and continuing violation of the First Amendment. So I believe there's still a continuing violation with this order. It is established that now the First Amendment, even for minimal period of time, unquestionably constitutes an irreparable injury. So there's issues of irreparable injury. The very essence of civil liberties certainly consists of the right of every individual to claim the protection of laws whenever he receives an injury. One of the first duties of government is to afford the protection. The right to sue and defend in court is the alternative to force. It is a form of punishment more primitive than torture, for it destroys the individual's political existence that were centuries in the making. So when you examine what's in this folder, I want you to keep that information in mind. On 5/1, I had filed a civil rights action in state court. And then on 5/7, there was also a message left on the answer machine. So 19 days after being deprived access to the court, I received that. So just after this the message on the answer machine, that would be 9 days after, I discovered this Buggish report. So there's no warrant, there was no subpoena, there was no affidavits, no sworn statements of a person asserting facts, so there was no ability to lodge objections. Who would be searching for this information? As I mentioned before, we will go through kind of the stuff in it and keep in mind, so who would be searching this information? So who's behind it, who placed it, who authorized it? Was there official misconduct within these cases or that I was involved, that was going on at the time? Was there civil rights violations at the time? Was there willful acts? And whether there was probable cause, if it existed, of the deprivation of rights, were there actually probable cause of federal crimes, of state color of law violations. I have never received any indication of who went in there and what it was searching for. It's still searching. I believe an interesting thing is the privileges of the right of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. So there's a federally protected right. So when I get blocked access, does it create enormous legal issues? As well as, how does one protect his civil rights if he doesn't have access to the courts? And were there federal crimes occurring with the deprivation of rights? So here's that order. I also want you to keep in mind, so there was multiple cases going on and past cases. So there was an enormous one with the U.S. versus Union Cheese. You can examine the YouTube of some of the issues. So one of the major issues within that case would be if the declarations of the named individuals were incorrect. And that would raise a whole slew of issues. So Rule 19, failure to join, Rule 11, and Rule 65 of notice. And if you fail to name an individual that was supposed to be joined, are there issues that the court lacked subject matter jurisdiction and the case would be void? Now, in a void order, it cannot be waived, defaulted, or lost in any way. There's issues that it's retroactive and can be raised at any time, either directly or collaterally, and it's ripe for 22 555 claims of a writ of habeas. So where that gets interesting is if I'm blocked access, does it create legal issues of obstructing justice and impeding, and has it suspended the writ of habeas? So keep in mind whether I, Antonio Gangale, was an indispensable party in the proceedings and must have been included in the lawsuit in order for the court to render and execute a final judgment. Further, was their rights being deprived in that case, and whether there was willfully depriving of rights. Further, whether the June 16th order was impossible, and that would also raise issues of cruel and unusual punishment, and whether the court knew that these issues existed. And was an August 6th crash, there was issues of being forced off the road, there was bodily injury, there was issues of excessive force and false arrest. Now, what's interesting, there are extremely complicated accrual times on civil rights actions. Further, within that crash issue, there was falsification and perjury, tampering with evidence, fraud, and withholding evidence. So, again, as I mentioned about the special accrual times, so were those issues potentially tolling at the time when I was blocked access, and the need to file civil rights actions regarding that? Along with that August 6th crash, there was an issue of an administrative license suspension. You'll see photos and evidence that it appears to be defective, it wasn't properly done, and there was issues that I did not refuse and was requesting counsel. So there's a numerous amounts of issues, and are there issues that it was void? We'll go into the documents and go a little further. Now, what makes that extremely troubling is, so this administrative license suspension, which, if there's issues of void, it was used in multiple cases within the state in which the state knew. So how does a tampered, falsified document, carbon copy get changed and incomplete? And that raises issues of the state OMVI charge, which was issues of the documents being falsified and tampered with, as long as it being defective, as well as if the rules of criminal procedure were followed, and if there was Fourth Amendment probable cause determinations, which that raises issues of habeas corpus being the proper remedy if the preliminary hearing was not done, and also the need for a neutral judge to hear those. There was also numerous conflicts of interest. As I mentioned, there was numerous cases this void document of the ALS was being used in, so there was a driving under suspension. So if there was issues of it being void, how would there be a conviction using that evidence? So there was numerous things of habeas corpus and legal rights being transpired at the time. As I mentioned, that I filed a civil rights action in state court when I was barred. You'll notice who was served, so if there's any issues that this was unlawfully restrained or that there were federal crimes or probable cause to believe that there was crimes or state crimes, it was clear that many people would have known and failed to do anything. When I first discovered the Bug-ish report, I really couldn't assess what they were doing or who was doing it. As I mentioned earlier, that this will be still, documents are still being, or objects are still within it, and you can better assess what's going on in there. There's a YouTube that discusses more in depth of was transpiring in cases. This would be a good thing to examine if you're interested. So again, there was this case here. Did the Northern District Court violate civil rights in this action, and was it void? So here's a list of issues. I recommend you going to the YouTube and examine them. Again, an indispensable party must be included in the lawsuit in order for the court to render and execute a final judgment. Mandatory joiner. Mandatory joiner is a person who is not originally party to a lawsuit, but whose presence in the lawsuit is necessary for it to proceed. Person who has interest in the case that would be unprotected if left out. Here, failure to join Rule 19, and here concerns failure to join an indispensable party pursuant to Rule 9, as with lack of subject matter jurisdiction, which can be raised at any time. So are there issues of being blocked access, unable to subject matter jurisdiction, here where jurisdiction is lacking, may be retroactively challenged the validity of the judgment, cannot waive subject matter jurisdiction, may be raised at any point in the litigation process, even if the parties had previously agreed to the subject matter jurisdiction existed. In fact, the court may dismiss an action on its own for a lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Lack of jurisdiction. When a federal court lacks constitutional statutory jurisdiction, has no power or authority to do anything. Such actions may also be attacked via Section 2255 motion. In fact, cannot be waived, defaulted, or lost in any way. If a court acted outside its limited jurisdiction, the action is void from the get-go. The lack of jurisdiction is ripe for a 2255 claim. And here's void judgments. Fraud can be attacked at any time in the court, either directly or collaterally. There's more void judgment. The writ of habeas corpus may be granted by the Supreme Court, any justice therein, the district courts, and any circuit judge within their respective jurisdiction. A void judgment is one that has been procured through extrinsic or collateral fraud or entered by a court that did not have jurisdiction over the subject matter or of the parties. Habeas corpus is the appropriate remedy to attack a void judgment or sentence. Motion under 28 U.S. Code 225, so it's a motion. Here we see that you must file the form in the United States District Court that entered the judgment that you are challenging. So if I'm barred access to file documents, can I file a 225? Here's some of the issues within the state of Ohio case. You see here some of the issues. So there's a numerous amount of issues here. And here's the conflicts of interest issues. As I mentioned, there was some, it appears, tampering, fraud, not properly filled out material, administrative license suspension. In order for the suspension to be imposed, the BMV must receive a notarized copy. The form is properly executed, brought to the court's attention, and the motion is made to be set aside, being void from the get-go. So you see this tampering, and you see all these differences. And again, these are carbon copies. Who would have filled it in? When was it filled in? How would they know the time? And all these things. So you see here when I was barred access, and also I was under threat of contempt and may be punished accordingly if the order was violated. Here, and it says in connection, was not to accept any filings or what, also motions. So, and it's certified an appeal couldn't be made in good faith. So how do you appeal being blocked access? Further disturbing, so not, as I mentioned, it was the same court that there was issues within union, and then there was the case of blocking access or depriving access, so there was no due process, no right to be heard, and a whole list of other things that was mentioned on that YouTube of being deprived the meaningful access to them. So you want to look at that one. So if you're facing an angry court or aggressive or annoyed, displeasured or hostile or does not like, and you're facing contempt and punished accordingly, is it basically a shark-infested waters with chum in the waters? How does a layman person, as well as I'm dyslexic, there's so much complex legal issues within these cases, the stress and the cognitive things that's going on, as well as the complexity of issues of the multiple of things going on. And then the court adds more requirements. Can any error expose you to possible punishment and contempt? So court or things of how it wants to punish you and whatnot. So you'll see the assistant U.S. attorney, just simple errors of like my address my name is wrong, the address wrong, and the state's wrong. Imagine going through all these complicated legal documents and what of all these things, or what's supposed to be in there. What did the court rule on before that they're saying that they ruled on, or what things or whatnot, or what's, and you're facing this court that you know has packed history. Is there serious issues of that issue of being punished accordingly, and what those actually are dealing with? Especially, you have a court that just blew out a First Amendment right to petition without due process or no right to be heard. So, as well as by now I had witnessed a judge that was even appointed by the Supreme Court of Ohio stating that he was not going to follow the law. So I've seen numerous things of what these judges have been going on. Again, the state case was going on 2 years with numerous violations and carbon copy things and void, which numerous attorneys, prosecutors, law directors, multiple judges, it would have been even the Ohio Attorney General. All these people knew that there was issues within these cases. Let's go through this and see who would be pulling things from this computer. At this point, there's around, I believe, just over 1,800 files. So I'm just going to scroll down through here. Now there's photos and there's also Word documents. I think for the sake of being just kind of... And you'll also see some of these have multiple photos in line. So what I was planning on doing is just scroll down through here, show you what's generally in here, and then I was going to do a slideshow of the pictures, since a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you can hopefully kind of derive a much better idea of what's in here and who would be going through this. And keep in mind all the legal issues that were going on at the time. So who would be on this? And let's go further, is if these issues can be raised at any time and they cannot be law if habeas corpus, so are they still issues that are ripe for a 225 motion within federal court here? So that is, so let me see. I think we just go up here. Yes. And I'm going to go on fast and just let this thing scroll. And you can pause it at documents that you are interested in reading, and I'll just let it happen. Again, there's like 1,800. I don't know how many are photos, so it might take some time. And I'll just sit back and let this thing So I think this is, yes. Took a little longer than I expected, or actually much longer than I expected. However, I want to go through everyone and let you see what's there. I believe this bug issue report, it seems to be tracking issues within the cases. I believe that there's issues, that there was a right of habeas corpus in those cases, and I believe I was deprived access to them. I believe that a writ can be filed at any time. I believe I'm obstructed from doing that. I believe that this venue has not been a fair and impartial venue at all. I believe a lot of law enforcement, attorneys, judges, and a lot of people were aware of all these issues within these cases. You can examine what they knew. They refused to address these issues. It appears there was considerable conflicts of interest in these cases. I believe that they are void. I believe that there's civil rights violations. I believe that there's willful. I'd like to thank you for your time.